Hi, this is Mark Brower, the director of the Recovery Journey and editor of the sexualsanity.com recovery blog. Today's teaching is part of a series called 8 Keys to Lasting Recovery. And today's key is the first one we're going to be talking about in some length, or at some length. And it's the ideal starting point, I suppose, and that is if we're going to recover, if we're going to find lasting recovery, we have to develop a plan, a realistic, reasonable plan for how that recovery is going to happen. So take a look at this training.
In this session, we're going to be talking about the 3-circle plan for recovery. And this is a way of looking at sexual behavior a little bit more broadly than just what things you want to do and what things you want to not do. And this was actually originally created in SAA, Sex Addicts Anonymous, back probably in the 80s, and it's been around in various forms. Best way to do this would be to take a blank sheet of paper out, and on that piece of paper draw 3 concentric circles. It'll look like a target, but it's not a target because the inner circle, what would be the bullseye, is the behaviors we're wanting to avoid. So it's just a way of representing it. And on this drawing that I'm going to make, I'm going to put those in red, and then the middle circle in yellow, and the outer circle in green, for reasons that will become apparent shortly here. With sex addiction, sexual behavior, sexual struggle, the challenge is defining what does it mean to be sober? What does it mean? How do we define that line between addictive behavior and normal behavior? We sometimes use the term acting out. What is acting out? If it was other addictions, a lot of the other addictions are more clear-cut. If we're talking about alcohol, drinking alcohol would mean that you're not sober. That would be acting out. Or if you're with a certain kind of drug addiction, you define what drugs, and to be sober is to be completely abstinent from using that substance. But with sexuality, it's such a deep part of our lives, and many of us are in relationships where, if not currently, we will be sexual. So we talk about this inner circle, and we want to get clear about what it means, and it's not obvious what it means, because the inner circle represents sobriety. These are the behaviors that you would say, if I do this, I'm not sober. So we want to live our lives without these things anymore. One of the programs, the 12-step program for sexual addiction, is Sexaholics Anonymous. And the way they define the inner circle is they say that acting out or breaking sobriety means sex with oneself or sex with anyone other than one's spouse. So the idea would be that masturbation or sex in any form with someone other than your spouse, that would be breaking sobriety. Now, that's a great way of looking at it, but one of the challenges that we find that people find in the SA program is, what about pornography? What about viewing things, looking at things that are intentionally, stimulating, erotic? Where does that fit into one's sobriety? And that's a big issue for many people, is pornography use, and it doesn't seem to fit there. And I know in a lot of the meetings and national conventions for SA, they talk about this, that pornography use really is a form of sex with someone else. So they would say that is included in their definition of sobriety. And yet, a number of meetings that I've attended, the people will often actually use 2 different sobriety dates. They'll talk about their sobriety is at a certain date, and then their freedom from pornography is at a different date. So we would actually like to suggest looking at it a different way. I don't remember where it was I heard this acronym years ago, but I have found it helpful, and in the workshops that I teach with Mark Laser, this is the acronym that we use, MAP, MAP. And so you might just, in the inner circle, just draw those 3 words, MAP. The M stands for masturbation, the A stands for adultery, and the P stands for pornography. M would be masturbation, and I realize that there is some controversy about this, or question, I guess, in people's minds. because it's widely practiced. The Bible doesn't speak directly about it. Some people feel that they can masturbate without using pornography or other things, and just think about their spouse or whatever. So maybe it's not so bad. And I don't want to make decisions or say anything about masturbation in general for the general public. I just know that for myself as a sexual struggler, for myself as an addict, it's just not a good thing. And maybe the best way to think about it is, it's like for the alcoholic, drinking a can of beer on a hot day, or drinking a glass of wine at dinner. That you might want to say, for most people, maybe that's okay. Maybe that's fine if they can control it. It's not a deal for them. We're not going to go back to the Prohibition era and try to outlaw it for everybody else. We just know that for ourselves, for an alcoholic would say, for myself, I can't do that, because once I open that door, I'm going to continue down that path and get in real trouble. So I have to avoid opening that door. And that's how I look at masturbation for sexual strugglers. It's opening the door of our addiction. It's really hard to engage in masturbation without fantasy, and it opens the door of our addiction. So we would say that that's part of sobriety. The second letter in this acronym is A, stands for adultery, and that would be sex in any form with someone other than your spouse. This would include any kind of inappropriate touch, phone sex, cyber sex, those kinds of things. That would be sex with someone other than your spouse. And then the third letter in the acronym is P, pornography, the intentional use of pornography. And maybe more that you would want to say to define what that means: intentionally viewing things that are erotic, meant to stimulate sexual desire, pornography. However you're going to define that, what you're saying is, I'm going to intentionally stay away from that. Okay, that's the inner circle, and that represents things that if you engage in those things, you reset your sobriety date. Yeah, I'm committing myself to stay away from those things. But you can see that leaves other things that are potentially problematic for us in terms of our sexual behavior. We're not addressing those things. What about engaging in fantasy? What about taking second looks at people where we're getting sort of an erotic charge out of that? What about inappropriate conversations, flirting behavior, those kinds of things? I mean, there's a variety of things that we might say would be unhealthy or contributing to lust, but we're not listing those as inner circle behaviors. That's where the middle circle comes in. Middle circle behaviors are things that are not necessarily breaking sobriety, but they are unhealthy and destructive and lead us into breaking sobriety. Middle circle are the things that are triggers for us, things that putting ourselves in places where we're vulnerable. They're things that are part of our rituals or the patterns that we get into. If we're, let's say, going to be, if one of our areas of struggle is we go to bookstores and we wind up looking at pornography and acting out in some fashion that way, well, going to the bookstore by ourselves is part of that pattern, and that may be middle circle behavior for us. So middle circle behaviors are the things that get us in trouble and that push us into or lead us into the inner circle. Now, the reason that we have these different sized circles is that there's not much space to write in the inner circle. Hopefully that's going to be a very clearly easy to define area, and there's not a lot of things that we're going to put there. The middle circle gives us more room to write because there's probably going to be more things we need to pay attention to. And maybe it might